The story begins with Lila, a young woman working as an English teacher. She had endured years of domestic violence at the hands of her husband, and after reaching her breaking point, she finally decided to divorce him. However, even after leaving her past behind, Lila continued to struggle with emotional anguish and loneliness as she searched for a new beginning. She moved to a new city and landed a job teaching English at a local high school. On her first day at the school, the principal introduced her to the history teacher, who was assigned to show her around the classrooms. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, we meet Jason, a 19-year-old boy living with his family. His household consisted of his parents, a younger sister, and an older brother. They came from a middle-class background, and his family struggled to make ends meet. Jason's older brother had turned to selling illegal substances to earn money, but was eventually caught and sent to prison. Jason's parents were determined to prevent him from making the same mistakes, so they constantly urged him to focus on his studies and build a better future for himself. However, Jason had little interest in academics and found school to be a burden. Despite his poor performance, his parents still hoped he would change. It was revealed that Jason had been expelled from several schools in the past and that, following in his brother's footsteps, he had also begun selling illegal substances for quick money. His main goal was to earn enough to support his younger sister's education and ensure she had opportunities he never had. Back at the school, Lila was teaching her students when Jason, who was in her class, sat in the back row trying not to draw attention. He spent most of his time outside of class engaging in reckless activities with his friends, often involving substance use and street fights. One day, while Lila was alone in the classroom, Andrew, the physical education teacher, approached her and complimented her on her unique and engaging teaching style, smiling warmly. Lila returned the smile, and the two began a casual conversation that marked the beginning of their relationship. Later that night, Lila called her mother seeking comfort. As they talked, her emotions overwhelmed her, and she struggled to hold back tears. Being in a new city without close connections, she felt an immense sense of loneliness. The next day, after classes ended, Jason approached Lila and hesitantly admitted that he needed help with writing. When she asked him what the assignment was, he replied that he had to write about himself but didn't know what to say. Sensing his hesitation, Lila assured him he could share anything with her, and that everything he said would remain strictly between them. But Jason was not ready to open up, so he left without another word. Concerned by his behavior, Lila followed him. However, before she could speak to him again, the history teacher approached and bluntly pointed out that students like Jason couldn't be helped. Lila refused to believe that, firmly stating that no student was a lost cause and that every student deserved the same opportunity. The following day, while reviewing student records, she came across Jason's file and learned that he was a recent transfer student with a history of poor academic performance. This revelation deepened her concern for him. Determined to help, she decided to pay him extra attention and guide him toward a better path. Later in class, the students were asked to present the poems they had written. When it was Jason's turn, he nervously stood up and began to read his poem. It was raw and full of emotion, reflecting deep pain and truth. Lila listened attentively, deeply moved by his words. Once the class ended, she approached Jason and praised his poem, telling him his writing was exceptional. She encouraged him to apply the same effort in his studies, assuring him that he had great potential. Hearing this, Jason couldn't help but smile. It was the first time someone had appreciated his work. The next day at school, Andrew approached Lila again and invited her to join him at a pub later that night. Eager to relax, Lila accepted. That night, Lila and Andrew enjoyed a few drinks and danced together. Unbeknownst to her, Jason was at the same pub with his friends. He saw her having fun, smiling as she danced. Seeing her happy made him want to dance too, but he stayed in the background. After a while, Lila left the pub and drove home. The next morning, she noticed that Jason had skipped classes and was wandering around outside the school. Disapproving of his behavior, she confronted him later when he returned to class. She took him aside and firmly told him not to miss class again, then made him an offer. She wanted to have an extra 30-minute session with him every day after school to help him with his studies. Surprisingly, Jason agreed. From that day on, Lila began giving him private lessons after school. However, instead of focusing on his lessons, Jason constantly found himself staring at her. Over time, his admiration grew into something deeper as he developed feelings for her though Lila remained completely unaware of his growing affection. That night, Lila sat alone in her apartment feeling lost and lonely, longing for someone who truly understood her. Just then, someone knocked on the door. When she opened it, she was surprised to see Jason standing there with a bruised face and a bloody nose. He looked as if he had been in a fight. Worried, she quickly let him in. Jason reassured her, saying, "I can't go home like this. I just need to clean up and then I'll leave." Concerned, Lila asked what had happened. Jason shrugged and said it had been a small fight. He stood to leave after washing up, but as he was about to go, Lila noticed it was raining outside and offered to drive him in her car. Jason accepted, and they set off together. On the drive, Lila tried to start a conversation by asking about his family, but he avoided the topic, making it clear he didn't want to talk about it. After a while, Jason asked her to stop the car. He took her to a scenic overlook with a view of the city lights shining beautifully in the distance. While there, Jason suddenly said, "I saw you dancing at the pub. I want you to teach me how to dance." Lila laughed, but agreed, and they began to dance together. However, when Jason moved closer and subtly touched her under the guise of dancing, Lila, feeling uncomfortable, quickly pulled away and said firmly, "This is wrong. I'm your teacher, and we can't cross that line. This must never happen again." Jason nodded, though deep down he didn't want to stop spending time with her. On the other hand, Lila also enjoyed Jason's company, but refused to admit it. Saying little more, she drove Jason home and left. The next morning, Jason's mother received his exam results and was pleasantly surprised to see a significant improvement in his grades. Excited, she asked how he had managed it. Jason smiled and replied, "It's all thanks to my new teacher. She helped me." Satisfied with the news, his mother said, "I'll make sure to thank your teacher at the next parent-teacher meeting." Meanwhile, Jason was at home scrolling through Lila's photos on social media. His attraction to her had become something much deeper. That night, Lila returned to the same pub with Andrew. Coincidentally, Jason was also there with his friends, but his eyes were fixed on Lila the entire time from his table. Andrew curiously asked Lila about her past, specifically why she had divorced her ex-husband. His questions made Lila uneasy, and she excused herself to go to the restroom. Seeing her leave, Jason followed. When she came out, Jason grabbed her wrist and pulled her into a brief, intense kiss. As soon as reality hit him, he stopped abruptly and stepped back, realizing how wrong it was. Shocked, Lila hurried back to Andrew, inventing an excuse that her mother was unwell and she needed to go home. She rushed out, but Jason followed her. At that moment, Andrew noticed Jason walking behind Lila. That same night, Jason appeared outside Lila's house. She initially refused to see him, telling him to go away. However, Jason pleaded, saying he just wanted to talk and apologize for what had happened. He took this chance to open his heart and confess his feelings for her. But Lila lied, saying she didn't feel the same. Jason didn't believe her. "If you don't love me, then why did you return my kiss that night?" he asked. "It was a mistake," Lila replied. Jason refused to accept this. She warned him that no one should ever find out about their relationship. Jason agreed, but found it ironic when she insisted that what happened between them must never happen again. The next day, Jason visited his suppliers and continued his involvement in drug trafficking. Meanwhile, at school, Nancy, the history teacher, approached Lila and confessed her own feelings for Andrew, asking her to stay away from him. Later during an extra class, Jason tried to kiss Lila again. She quickly stopped him, reminding him they couldn't behave like that in public and that no one should know about them. Jason respected her wishes, but playfully told her to close her eyes. When she did, he placed a delicate necklace around her neck as a gift. Lila was touched and smiled warmly. That night, Lila confided in her mother on the phone, admitting that she had feelings for someone much younger. Her mother advised her to marry someone who truly made her happy. The next day, Lila and Jason went on a secret outing to a serene lake. They laughed, enjoyed each other's company, and Jason took photos of them with his phone. Curious, Jason finally asked why she had moved to this city. Lila hesitated, but then opened up about her past, revealing how her marriage was abusive and that after suffering for years, she had finally summoned the courage to divorce her husband and start over. Hearing this, Jason was deeply moved and promised, "I will never hurt you again." Later, as Jason was showering at home, his mother secretly checked his phone. To her surprise, she found photos of Jason and Lila together in poses far too intimate for a student-teacher relationship. The next day, during the parent-teacher conference at school, Lila approached Andrew to ask for a file. As he handed it to her, he smiled and said, "We're good friends, right?" That same night, Jason's mother visited Lila at the school. As they sat and talked, Lila tried to explain how much Jason had improved in his studies, but suddenly, Jason's mother became furious. "I enrolled my son in this school so he could focus on his education and not waste time having a relationship with teachers like you," she shouted. "You'd better stay away from him." With that, she stormed off, leaving Lila stunned. The tense exchange did not go unnoticed. The principal saw Jason's mother angry and approached Lila. "What happened?" she asked. Trying to avoid suspicion, Lila simply replied that the woman had been in a hurry. However, Nancy, who had been watching from a distance, began to put the pieces together and suspected there was something more going on between Lila and Jason. That night, when Jason returned home, his mother confronted him directly. "Tell me the truth, Jason. What's happening between you and that teacher?" Jason did not hesitate. "I love her," he confessed. His mother's face darkened with anger. "You have to end this now," she demanded, insisting that Lila was taking advantage of her son. Jason defended his relationship. "It's not like that, Mom. You don't understand." A heated argument ensued, and frustrated, Jason ran out of the house. Meanwhile, Lila was on the phone with her own mother and finally confessed the truth. The younger man she had mentioned was actually her student. Her mother was horrified. "This is wrong. You must end it immediately," she insisted. At that moment, Jason arrived at Lila's house, but instead of welcoming him, she lashed out. "How did your mother find out about us? I told you not to tell anyone." Jason replied, "I just found out today too. I swear I didn't tell anyone." Lila was visibly shocked. "You have to go," she said firmly. "If someone at school finds out, I'll be fired." A few hours later, Jason returned with a bouquet of flowers and saw Lila at her door again. Lila sighed, hesitated, but finally forgave him. That night, they shared an intimate moment once more. The next morning, while they sat together, Jason brought up the inevitable. "Sooner or later, everyone will find out," he said. Lila nodded with a worried expression and said, "We have to figure something out before things get out of control." Hearing this, Jason said, "I have some savings. We could leave this place together and start over somewhere else." But Lila shook her head. Running away isn't the solution. The next day at school, Jason held Lila's hand as they talked. When Andrew saw them, his expression darkened, as he realized that was why Jason had been so drawn to Lila all along. Later that night, as Lila stayed late at school to finish some work, Andrew seized the opportunity, cornered her, and tried to force himself on her. Shaken and horrified, Lila returned home, reliving the incident over and over in her mind. She never expected Andrew to do something like that. That night, Jason arrived at her house and noticed her distress. "What's wrong?" he asked. Lila, unable to hold back, told him everything. Jason clenched his fists. "You have to go to the police," he said angrily. But Lila refused. "Andrew threatened me. If I report him, he'll expose our relationship to everyone." The next day at school, Jason couldn't contain his anger. The moment he saw Andrew, he lunged at him, beating him repeatedly. The fight quickly escalated, drawing everyone's attention. Within minutes, the police arrived and restrained Jason before taking him away in handcuffs. Later, Jason's mother arrived at the police station and secured his release. As they left, she saw Lila standing nearby, furious. She turned to Lila and coldly warned, "Stay away from my son," before leaving with Jason. At school, Lila's heart was broken as she thought about Jason and how things had spiraled out of control. That night, she made a firm decision and confronted Andrew. "Everything you did was caught on the school's security cameras," she told him. Andrew's face went pale. "If you don't drop the charges against Jason, I will go directly to the police," she warned him. Realizing he had no choice, Andrew reluctantly agreed. The next day, Jason appeared at Lila's house, relieved that the charges against him had been dropped. But before he could say anything, Lila looked at him with sad eyes. "I'm leaving this town," she said softly. Jason's smile faded. "Why?" he asked. Lila took a deep breath. because I finally understand that our relationship is wrong. I can't do this anymore." Jason was devastated. "No, please," he whispered with a choked voice. Tears welled in Lila's eyes, but she remained firm. "You have to move on, Jason. You have your whole life ahead of you." Devastated, Lila watched Jason walk away. That night, Jason returned home and collapsed in his mother's arms, crying. Meanwhile, Lila boarded a bus that took her out of town, leaving everything behind. And with that, the story comes to an emotional end.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.